Hey everyone, in this recipe video we're going to be doing an herb crusted roast beef. A perfect dish for, a weekend and also for a holiday. Now for starters we're going to dry off the roast, and in this video we're going to be using a chuck roast, but you could also use different other cuts that are available for sale in the store. And then we're going to go ahead and tie the roast. Now I'm using butcher's twine, and we're going to tie it and approximately 1 to 1.5 inch sections, and we're really doing this so that we're trying to get a very uniform piece of beef so that it also roasts and cooks very uniformly. One thing to think about is, while I am tying this, if you don't have butcher's twine, don't let this stop you. The butcher's twine gives you a more even eating experience, but you're still gonna have a great experience if you don't tie the roast. Now we're gonna go ahead and sear the beef. As you can tell, I'm very liberally seasoning this with salt and pepper. Remember, the seasoning is only going the outer surfaces of this whole roast, and so you can liberally season this because you're trying to balance the amount of seasoning relative to the surface area once you start slicing it. We're getting a pan nice and hot. I'm using some regular olive oil. You can use vegetable oil as well, or canola oil, or use a neutral flavored oil, but you want to get the oil super hot. You're trying to really brown this piece of beef. As you can see, it's smoking and it's searing really nicely, and part of it's because I got the pan really hot, but I also dried off the piece of beef to get all the extra moisture. As you can see, we've got some really good color on this. We're gonna let it brown on both sides, and then I'm also going to take time to sear the sides of the piece of beef. And all of this searing and caramelization is really adding to the flavor. Take your time when you're doing this part of the step, because this is one of those details that people frequently overlook, and that's one of those details that makes the difference between amazing, excellent cooking and just average cooking. Now we're going to take the beef out, and then we're going to go ahead and get the crust going. Now, if you wanted to just have a neutral flavored roast, I would put it in the oven and roast it just like that. But in this recipe, we're gonna go a little bit further to kick it up. So we have mustard. I'm gonna glaze it with the mustard. Now the mustard is gonna add flavor, but it also really kind of acts like the glue that's gonna hold the herb crust. Evenly putting it on both sides. Get it all kind of like worked in there. And now I have herbs, and we're going to go and just kind of mix them together. Now the recipe here we're doing has rosemary and thyme. You can use rosemary, thyme, and sage if you have. You can use parsley. At minimum, you want to at least have rosemary and or thyme, because that really gives a good flavor. But the mixture really gives a nice blend of different things going on. We'll put it on a pan, put it in the oven. Now I'm gonna roast this to 120 degrees Fahrenheit and checked with a thermometer. That gives me a perfect medium rare medium. This herb crusted roast beef is really delicious. Now, I used the chuck roast here, and I like the chuck because it gives a nice, really meaty flavor, and there's a little bit more fat. So this is a great one to do if you're gonna roast something to eat hot as a main. One other roast that you can play with that also gives a really great experience, but just a little bit different, would be a bottom round. The bottom round is nice and it's round. It's a little bit leaner, but the nice thing about the round is if you were to roast that and then let it refrigerate, you can slice it very thin, and it makes really great cold sandwiches the next day. So two great options, perfect for a holiday season. A great way to change up if you're tired of doing a prime rib, or the prime rib, if it's a little bit out of bounds for cost. I think doing an herb crusted roast beef is gonna give you a really, really great eating experience. And You know, you can play with this recipe too. I did the mustard and herbs. You could also just sear it, salt and pepper, or you could pepper crust it. You know, there's a lot of different ways you can do this, but ultimately the key is get that searing on there, get it in that low oven at 325, and just go up to 150 degrees and check it with a thermometer. Before I get into this slider here, for more recipes like this, visit us at foodland.com. Oh yeah.